They're not the same. They can survive together very nicely and have long-term relationships and so on.
I understand. Thank you. If a narcissist makes something wrong, something terrible, and then he says next day, I didn't do it. I don't remember. It's not truth. Is it really he doesn't remember it, or it is lie?
He really doesn't remember. There is this misconception, especially online, that narcissists lie, that narcissists gaslight, that narcissists future fake. They make you promises and they don't keep the promise. Yeah. All this is not true. This is true of psychopaths. Psychopaths lie. Psychopaths gaslight, definitely. Psychopaths future fake. All these psychopaths do. Narcissists are delusional. They are almost psychotic. Otto Kernberg suggested that they are actually kind of psychotic people. They almost have psychosis. They're not very far from schizophrenics. This is very serious disease. It's not a joke. Much more serious than psychopathy. Much more. So they are delusional. And they're not only delusional, but they are 100% in fantasy. They have no contact with reality. We call it impaired reality testing. Narcissists have zero contact with reality. They live 100% inside their minds in a fantasy. Other people don't exist. They exist inside the mind. They are internal objects. It's totally crazy. And the narcissist has dissociation. Dissociation, severe dissociation, like the borderline. In other words, the narcissist has memory gaps. Gaps in memory. Narcissist forgets a lot. A lot. And so to compensate for these memory gaps, the narcissist invents stories, narratives. Narcissist creates bridges, fictional bridges, to paper over, to somehow compensate for the memory gap. And then he believes in these inventions, in these stories. And he regards them as facts. So even when you confront the narcissist with a video recording, he would deny it, because that's not how he remembers things. He remembers it differently. Now, this process is called confabulation. And it is very common. Confabulation is also very common in schizophrenia and other psychotic patients. Confabulation is the narcissist remembers point A, remembers event A. Let's call it event A. And then he remembers event C. Event A happened half an hour ago. Event C happened 5 minutes ago. 25 minutes are missing. Nothing. He has no memory of these 25 minutes. He just remembers A and C. So he says it's panic reaction. It creates anxiety, creates dissonance, and there's a panic reaction. And he says, what happened? What happened between A and C? And he says, probably what happened is this and that. Probably what happened is event B. A, B, C. I remember A, I remember C. Probably there was B. Otherwise, how did I get to C? B. And then he says, yeah, it was B. Yeah, absolutely. I remember B. I was there. It happened. And then you come to him and say, it was not B. I have a video of you. And this video shows it was not B, it was L. There's no way. It was not L, it was B. I remember it clearly that it was B. I was there. Nothing. You cannot convince him that it was not B, it was L. Not even a video recording, because he is emotionally invested. He is cathected. There is cathexis. There is emotional investment in the confabulation. It is very frightening not to have continuous memory, because when you don't have continuous memory, you don't have identity. Identity depends on memory and is derived from memory. Core identity is the sum total of your memories. If you have zero memory, like in Alzheimer's disease, if you have zero memory, like in Korsakoff syndrome, you don't have identity. So it's very frightening. And so the narcissist uses confabulation as anxiolysis to reduce anxiety. The confabulation is anxiolytic. And then the only way for the confabulation to work is to believe that it is not a confabulation. It is reality. It really happened. And then he's invested in it, and you cannot change his mind. So there's a combination here of psychotic features, hyper-reflexivity, confabulation. These are psychotic features, coupled with delusionality, because narcissism is delusional disorder. The narcissist is totally delusional about the world. When you put the two together, you begin to understand that the narcissist is not lying to you. He's not gaslighting you. He's not future faking. When he makes you a promise, he really believes that he will keep this promise. When he tells you that he remembers something, he really believes that he remembers. Everything he says, he really believes. When there is a fantasy, he thinks it's reality. He's a sick individual. It's sick. People refuse to accept that it is a sickness. They think the narcissist is evil creature who is, they're confusing narcissist and psychopath. Psychopath knows exactly what they're doing. Psychopath knows that he's lying to you, falsifying your memory, challenging your reality, perception of reality, manipulating you, taking things from you. This is psychopath, yes. Psychopaths are cunning, scheming, not the narcissist. Not the narcissist.
Fantastic. And what is the reason of the sadistic resource? Why for they are doing that? What they're feeling? What is the reason of it?
Very few narcissists are sadists. The prevalence of sadism in the incidence of sadism in among psychopaths is much higher. In other words, many more psychopaths are sadists than narcissists. Psychopaths are likely to be sadistic to some extent. Many psychopaths are seriously sadistic, like, sexual sadists and so on. In narcissism, sadism is a lot less common. A lot less common, and again, we believe that about 2 to 3% of narcissists are sadists. Sadism makes you feel powerful, godlike. If you have the capacity to inflict pain, if the narcissist can create in you pain, if the narcissist can make you feel pain, it means the narcissist has power over you. Pain, the ability to create pain in another person is proof of omnipotence, proof of being all-powerful. So it's a grandiose construct. The sadism in narcissism goes hand in hand with grandiosity. The narcissist would say to himself, the fact that I can hurt people, the fact that I can harm people, the fact that I can cause them pain, the fact that I can make them beg me to stop, this proves that I'm godlike. Even if I take someone's life, it makes me God. Only God can take life. So I can take life. It makes me God. So narcissism is very common among serial killers. Very common among serial killers. So because serial killers very often use the murders to self-aggrandize, to support their own grandiose self-concept. And so luckily sadism is very limited, and even when sadism exists, it is usually verbal sadism and usually brief sadism. Like, it's not all the time. It's like there are eruptions, there are bursts of sadism. Bursts of sadism, and then it stops. Bursts and it stops. Intermittent. We call it intermittent sadism. So among narcissists, sadism is not a prominent, not a dominant clinical feature. It is not even mentioned in the diagnostic manuals, not in the DSM, not in the ICD, nowhere. There used to be a sadistic personality disorder. In the DSM-3, there was sadistic personality, the DSM Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Yeah. But they deleted it. They eliminated it. So today we don't have sadism anywhere, by the way, in the DSM. You cannot find sadism in the DSM. And but sadism is real. There are people who derive pleasure and a sense of grandiose omnipotence and a sense of being godlike by inflicting pain on other people. That is absolutely clinically real phenomenon. I don't care what the DSM says. It's absolutely real. And when this happens, usually these people are narcissists. So a small minority of narcissists are sadists, but a majority of sadists are narcissists.
Thank you, I understand. How could you explain why the most narcissists, is it true, believe in esoteric conceptions?
Yeah. One more thing before we go there. When I say pain, that the sadist likes to inflict pain, there could be many types of pain. For example, extreme acute discomfort or humiliation, shaming someone, or exposing someone. So you could have even pro-social sadism, communal sadism. For example, you could be a journalist and you could be all the time investigating corruption. And you're exposing people who are corrupt and they end up in prison or they kill themselves. And you enjoy it. You love it. You love hurting people. You love the pain that you're not exposing the corruption as a journalist, you're exposing the corruption as a sadist. You understand? So sadism can be moral. You could have moral sadism. You can use morality, you can use ethics to be sadistic. Your morality, your ethics could be so extreme, so harsh, that you are torturing people. You're hurting them with your morality. You understand? So that's just to clarify that pain has there are many ways to inflict pain. You could even use sense of humor to inflict pain. You could have a brutal, sadistic sense of humor. You know, anything can be used to inflict pain on people. There is no correlation or evidence that narcissists are likely to be more esoteric or more inclined to esoteric studies than normal people. There is a personality disorder where people are more inclined to study esoteric topics, and it is the schizotypal personality disorder. In schizotypal personality disorder, people are likely to be conspiracy theorists. They're likely to believe in things like UFOs or witchcraft or astrology or so this is schizotypal personality disorder, not narcissism.
Understand. And is it clear what is dynamic of this disorder? What will be with this person in old age, if nothing will influence on it?
We know that today the approach to pathological narcissism is we emphasize traits. We call them trait domains. So we emphasize certain traits in narcissism, certain qualities, most of them genetic, as I said, all of them actually. And we pay less attention to behaviors. We emphasize much more traits and dynamics, internal dynamics. And so when you look at the narcissist from the framework of traits, some traits ameliorate with age. Some traits become better with age. For example, the narcissist is less likely to be antagonistic, less likely to seek conflict, less likely to be aggressive. Antagonism is a psychopathic, antisocial element in narcissism. And we know that psychopathy, antisocial traits, become better with age. Generally, even among psychopaths. For example, the rate of criminal behavior among psychopaths collapses after age 45. Psychopaths after age 45 are almost never criminal. So we know that many of these traits change. And so antagonism is one example. We know that some types of negative affects become less intense. So, for example, narcissist becomes less envious as they age. But grosso modo, overall, there is no discernible change over the lifespan. In other words, narcissism is there to stay regardless of age. This is not the case in borderline. In borderline personality disorder, after age 45, 81% of people with borderline personality disorder lose the diagnosis. Same with some behaviors in psychopathy. So the prognosis for borderline and psychopathy is much better than the prognosis for narcissism. Narcissistic personality disorder seems to be a lifespan disorder, common in all stages of life, and doesn't change noticeably or in intensity or in manifestation. There was a study last year, there was a study that suggested that narcissists become more empathic with age. The study is very flawed, and it actually did not study narcissists. It studied people with dark personalities. As you remember from the beginning of our conversation, when we were both much younger, that people with dark personalities are not narcissists. They are subclinical narcissists. So at this stage, we believe that narcissism, in the best case, remains the same. And there are some scholars who suggest that narcissism becomes worse with age, because the narcissist is much more difficult for the narcissist in old age to obtain narcissistic supply. When the narcissist is old, it's much more difficult for the narcissist to find intimate partners, much more difficult to the narcissist to impress people, much more difficult to obtain attention when he's old. So narcissists experience in old age collapse, narcissistic injury, narcissistic mortification. They become covert much more often. And so there are scholars who believe that narcissism actually aggravates with old age, becomes worse. This, by the way, goes hand in hand with disorders, diseases that are common in old age. For example, dementia, Alzheimer's, and other dementias. For example, diabetes. These disorders have kind of have synergy with narcissism. They contribute to narcissism. They enhance narcissism. So because many old people have diabetes, many old people have, some old people have dementia, this would exacerbate the narcissism. It would make the narcissism much, much worse. A narcissist who has dementia is a nightmare. He's the worst type of patient because he has both dementia and narcissism, and they feed on each other all the time. They mutually reinforce, mutually enhance. Same to some extent diabetes. Diabetes, another example. There are other diseases which are common in old age diseases that collaborate with narcissism, make it stronger, make it feel more pronounced.
Wonderful question. Women like to ask this question because it is excitable for them. Often narcissist makes narcissistic pinks. So he disappears. I understand. I explain. He disappears from the woman's life, and then he appears again and say that, "How are you? No problem." it said that he was all the time was with her, but it's no problem that she didn't see him several years.
Yulia means ping. It's called ping.
Ping,
Yeah. Hoovering. It's a
Uh,
form of hoovering. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Why
part of
do
hovering.
they? Yes. Why do they make them, and how to react for women on this behavior? The thing.
The narcissist interacts with intimate partners via a construct called the shared fantasy. The shared fantasy is highly complex. It includes various elements. Both parties to the shared fantasy play roles. Both of them play maternal roles, for example, and so on. At some point, the shared fantasy always leads to devaluation of the partner and discard of the partner, getting rid of the partner, breaking up with the partner. For reasons that I will not go into right now. If you want to learn more about this, then you can watch the Shared Fantasy playlist on my YouTube channel. Shared Fantasy deserves its own interview because it's really very complex. Following the discard, the narcissist remains stuck with the internal object that represented the partner in the narcissist's mind. You remember that narcissists do not interact with external objects. They cannot perceive the separateness and externality of people. So what they do, they create avatars, they create visuals, mental representations in their minds, and they continue to interact with these representations. When the narcissist breaks up with the partner is gone, but the representation stays. The internal object that represented the partner and with which the narcissist had the most interaction remains. So this creates dissonance. There is an internal object that is supposed to represent an external object, but there is no external object. It's a sense of something missing. I compare it to amputation. When you amputate a leg, you still feel the leg is there. This is called phantom pain or phantom. When the narcissist amputates the partner, he still feels the partner is there. And this creates a lot of anxiety, a lot of dissonance. And so the narcissist tries to overcome this. He tries to overcome it by finding another partner. He tries to overcome it by recasting, recharacterizing the internal object as what we call a persecutory object, an enemy. So he changes the nature of the internal object into, for example, an enemy. He tries to pretend that the internal object is not there, to deny, repress the internal object. Now, sometimes it works. Sometimes the narcissist finds another partner, and he is so busy with the other partner, he creates another internal object to represent the new partner. He has a new shared fantasy and so on. And sometimes it works. Sometimes he changes the nature of the internal object, and this also works, especially if the real partner, the external object, really becomes an enemy. So then the internal object conforms to the external object, and the dissonance disappears. So if the narcissist changes the internal object and says, my ex-partner is my enemy now, and the ex-partner is really an enemy now, really becomes an enemy, then the internal object and the external objects match, and there is no dissonance. But sometimes this fails, and the internal object is active, and it creates a lot of anxiety, and so the only way to solve this is to reacquire the external object, to take her back by re-idealizing her and creating a new shared fantasy. So then the narcissist would approach the ex-partner and would offer to her, in effect, to continue the shared fantasy. He would re-idealize her, and then she would be out there, the internal object is here, and the dissonance and anxiety disappear. This process is known as hoovering. In the narcissist's mind, you don't exist externally. So the relationship never ended. because your internal object is in his mind and he continues to interact with the internal object. This is why you and the narcissist break up. 10 years later, 10 years later, he comes back to you and he continues to talk to you like you broke up yesterday, not 10 years ago, because in his mind, you were never gone. He continued the interaction in his mind with your internal object. So he would try to hoover you to remove the discrepancy between external and internal, to match you to the internal object again, and to restart the shared fantasy. Because as long as you're out of his life as an external object, the internal object is bothering him. There is external Yulia. Yulia is gone, but there is internal Yulia inside his mind. There's Yulia inside his mind, and she's active. This creates a lot of mess. And the only way is to bring Yulia back, to match her with the internal object. There's no difference, no discrepancy, and he can rest. Not always, but sometimes, if he fails to find other solutions.
What do you recommend for women to do in this situation?
No contact.
No contact.
When I started my work in the 1980s, I came up with a set of strategies, and I called them no contact. This is the famous no contact today that everyone is saying. So it's the only long-term solution. There are many, many small strategies, other strategies that you can use if you want to survive with a narcissist, if you want to continue the relationship, or you're forced to continue the relationship, maybe. But none of them is in the long term, and none of them solves the issue. You must walk away. And you must walk away because narcissism is also contagious. It's like a virus. And if you stay in the presence of the narcissist, if you interact with the narcissist, if you have a relationship with the narcissist, you will become a narcissist. So this is a serious danger. The only way to survive with the narcissist somehow is to adopt narcissistic behaviors, narcissistic reactions, to become abusive yourself. This is known as reactive abuse. You become more and more narcissistic all the time. You lose your empathy. You are trapped in the fantasy. You lose contact with reality. You lose all touch with your friends and family. You're isolated. You're becoming a narcissist. You just don't realize it. So it's contagious. It's an infection. You need to walk away before it's too late. There have been studies in Harvard University, Alan Buddy, others, that showed that if you're exposed to the narcissist for 3 seconds, you already feel uncomfortable. Something in you feel bad. This is known as the uncanny valley reaction. There have been many, many studies that have shown that if you're exposed to a narcissist for 30 seconds, 30 seconds, not years, not days, not minutes, seconds. And if you're exposed to the narcissist for 30 seconds, not directly, through a video or through an email, you develop extreme discomfort, cognitive dissonance, and you begin to react in ways which resemble narcissism. For example, you become a lot more aggressive, internally aggressive. You don't do anything, but you become a lot more aggressive, a lot more empathic, very paranoid, and so on. This is in 30 seconds. Now imagine if you're with a narcissist for 30 years. You lose your identity. You're no longer yourself. It's a very, very high price to pay. You need to walk away. The narcissist needs you to disappear. Because the narcissist interacts, responds to, and has a relationship with only the internal object, your external existence is a threat, is a problem. because there is the internal object in the narcissist's mind. The narcissist controls the internal object. The narcissist manipulates the internal object. The narcissist talks to the internal object. The relationship of the narcissist is with the internal object that looks like Yulia, has the face of Yulia, and the history of Yulia and everything, but it's not Yulia. It's an internal object. It's an avatar. So the narcissist interacts with this, and you're outside. You're real. You're external. You have a life. You make decisions. You travel. You make new friends. You talk to your family. Every time you show any sign of life, every time you show any sign of independence, you create conflict with the internal object. You talk to your mother, but the internal object is not talking to your mother. So this is discrepancy. It's a problem. It doesn't sit together. Your life, your personal autonomy, your independence, they challenge the internal object. They are They're threatening to the internal object. So the narcissist wants you dead, metaphorically dead. He wants to deanimate you, take away your life force. He wants you to be static, inert, object. He objectifies you. There is a famous movie by Alfred Hitchcock. It's called Psycho. It's a 1960 movie. In the movie Psycho, there is a motel. Motel is a small hotel in the United States. So there is a motel. And the owner of the motel is a guy called Norman Bates. Norman Bates killed his mother. He killed his mother. What he did, he embalmed her. He converted her into Egyptian mummy, like a mummy. Every morning, he goes up to her room. He takes out the mummy. It's dead. The mother is dead. She's like a stuffed animal, you know? So he takes her body. He goes to the shower. He gives her a shower. He puts her clothes. He brings her back to the room. He puts her on a chair facing the window so that she can see outside. That's in the morning. In the evening, he comes up. He takes her out of the chair. He washes her. He puts her to bed. He kisses her on the cheek or whatever. And he says, "Good night, mother. See you tomorrow." She's dead. This is the ideal partner of the narcissist. That's the ideal partner of the narcissist. Because she never moves, she never talks, she never answers, she never challenges the internal object in the mind of Norman Bates. As far as he's concerned, he has a mother. She's alive in his mind. He washes her, he talks to her, he argues with her, he puts her in bed, he puts her on the chair. They have a relationship. In Norman Bates' mind, they're having a relationship. But she's dead. And so this is how the narcissist wants you to be. An Egyptian mummy. Because everything you do that the internal object does not do, you are challenging the narcissist's mind. And he hates you for that. Ultimately, you become an enemy. Because if you challenge him once, twice, 10 times, 20 times, 50 times, 100 times, you become an enemy. You are a source of frustration. You constantly undermine, destabilize his mind, because in his mind, the internal objects are fixed. Everything is arranged beautifully. And here you come and you destroy everything. So you must be an enemy. He is changing you in his mind into a persecutory object, an enemy. Then he devalues you and he discards you. So it's a very sick, unhealthy dynamic. And you don't want to be a part of it. You don't want to play the role of the mother in the movie Psycho. But if you are not careful, you will end up this way. Maybe not dead physically, but dead mentally, definitely.
It's difficult to представить, imagine this.
Think about a narcissist as a psychotic. the mistake we all make is to think about the narcissist as just another person, another guy, another girl. Not nice, not pleasant, aggressive, obnoxious, this, that, but generally like one of us. The narcissist is not one of us. He is no longer with us. He is absolutely, I agree with Kernberg, he's psychotic. This is a form of psychosis. He is completely in another universe. He's not hallucinating. So clinically, we cannot say that narcissism is psychosis because there are no hallucinations. But there is very close to hallucinations. Very, very close. When you confuse external object with internal object, that is very, very close to hallucination. And the narcissist has key clinical feature, very important clinical feature of psychosis, hyper-reflexivity. Hyper-reflexivity is when there is a confusion between self and the world. You can't tell, you can't say where you end and the world begins. So everything is one, like huge oneness. And so the psychotic, when something happens in the psychotic mind, the psychotic believes it is happening outside, not in his mind. When the psychotic has an internal voice, he thinks it's external voice. When the psychotic sees something internally, he thinks it's out there. There is a confusion in psychosis between external and internal. Same with the narcissist. There's a confusion between external and internal. And there is hyperreflexivity in the sense that the narcissist is embedded in a fantasy that replaces reality completely. Think about it for a minute. I keep saying that the narcissist lives in a fantasy, okay? That he has no access to reality. But wait a minute. Where is this fantasy? In his mind. The fantasy is in his mind. So the narcissist lives inside his mind, never in reality. Exactly like the psychotic. Exactly like the psychotic. No difference here. No. So I think, like Kernberg, that this is pseudo-psychosis. It's form of psychosis, absolutely. And in this sense, I think it's a mistake in the DSM that they're putting this together with psychopathy. Psychopathy, antisocial personality disorder, has nothing to do with narcissistic personality disorder, in my view. These are totally different clinical categories and so on. The narcissist and the borderline have some things in common. They have dissociation, for example, both of them. They have fantasy defense, both of them. They have a false self. The narcissist and the borderline have a false self. So there's some things in common between narcissists, but narcissist has very little in common with psychopath. I'm talking about psychodynamics. Psychodynamics of narcissist has nothing to do with psychodynamics of psychopath. So I think it's a mistake to make this grouping. That is the situation, as long as you refuse to accept that the narcissist is really, really, really very, very, very sick.
Yeah.
And maybe should not be outside. Maybe should be in an institution, As long as you refuse to accept this, then you will never understand narcissism. You will blame the narcissist, you will argue with the narcissist, you will try to convince, all this is nonsense. Even in therapy, it's nonsense, because we talk to the narcissist in therapy as if it's some kind of adult, as if we can make agreement with the narcissist, we can convince the narcissist, we can compromise with the narcissist. It's complete nonsense. It's a 2-year-old child who is also psychotic. End of story. Nothing to do. Nothing to do in a relationship, nothing to do in therapy, nothing to do anywhere. You can help the narcissist, as you said correctly, you can help the narcissist adapt. We can help the narcissist with adaptation, to teach the narcissist how to survive his own disorder and somehow function, but nothing more fundamental than this.
How it will better to survive? Not marry? It
The
is
narcissist
difficult to say.
doesn't see any problem. He doesn't regard himself as problematic. But I advise other people to not marry narcissists. Yes, absolutely. Not be in any contact, any kind of contact. Not even employ a narcissist, not marry, not any kind of contact. If you bring a narcissist into your business, he will destroy the business. If you bring a narcissist to your family, he will destroy the family. If you become friends with a neighbor who is a narcissist, sooner or later, that neighbor will destroy your life. You can negotiate with a psychopath. You can make agreements with psychopaths. Psychopaths are goal-oriented. They want something. They want your money. They want something. It's not the case with the narcissist. Narcissist is crazy. These are crazy people. Simple. I don't know how else to put it. These are simply crazy people.
Maybe it will be any medicines, medical treatment.
Possibly in maybe a combination of medicines, but maybe some things could be controlled. There are experiments with certain psychedelics where people report experiencing enhanced empathy. When they take certain psychedelics, they feel more connected to other people, feel more empathic and so on. Maybe we could start with psychedelics to some extent. Psychedelics reduce depression. We know that. They're good with anxiety. And anxiety and depression are key features in narcissism. And empathy, lack of affective empathy. So maybe we could start with a combination of psychedelics and maybe some other things. I don't know. I don't know. Remember the following. Schizophrenia, only 50 years ago, schizophrenia, or 60 years ago, schizophrenia was considered the worst possible mental illness. Like nothing worse than this. A destruction of the mind. Nothing is left. And people were talking about schizophrenia the way I'm talking about narcissism. But today, with antipsychotics and other medications, schizophrenia is totally manageable condition. Totally manageable. If you take your medication regularly, you can function perfectly, you can have a family, you can work, Same with bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder 40, 50 years ago, people were saying, the end, nothing to do, crazy people, this, that. And today, with minimal medications, bipolar is totally controlled. 1 pill a day. Bipolar is totally controlled. So maybe there is ground for optimism, because bipolar disorder and schizophrenia are highly complex conditions. And they are completely controllable with medication. I would even say, practically speaking, they are curable, because if you take a medication all the time, then you will never have symptoms. So maybe the same will happen with narcissism. I'm more optimistic about borderline thing, because in borderline we have absolute proof that there are brain abnormalities and genetic hereditary components. So borderline is much more biological. There's no question about this. So I'm much more optimistic about borderline. And even to some extent, I'm more optimistic about psychopathy, when it comes to medication. Because psychopathy is definitely involves massive problems in the brain and in physiology, change physiology of the body, and probably a genetic component. So I think borderline and psychopathy would be the first to be medicated efficaciously. But maybe then narcissism as well. I hope. Because it is sad. It's a sad situation. Many narcissists are very gifted. Many narcissists are talented. Many narcissists are intelligent. They can contribute to society. They are children. It is also sad because they are really children. It's not just metaphor. Internally, their internal experience is the experience of a completely confused child, completely traumatized, completely abused, in panic, child in panic, This is the internal experience of the narcissist. And it is sad. It's simply sad. So as a child, the narcissist tries to cope in adult society, and he keeps failing. He's trying to have relationships, he fails. He cannot experience love. He's trying to build things and they fall apart. He's constantly threatened from the outside. He becomes paranoid. And that's because of the immaturity of the narcissist. He's immature. He's a baby. It's a baby, you know. And that is also a sad aspect. So it's a sad disorder. I would say, you know, when we teach psychology, we say to the student, there are three types of people: mad, bad, and sad. So mad would be borderline. Bad would be psychopath. And I think sad is narcissist. I find it to be very sad disorder because the psychopath doesn't try. Psychopath couldn't care less. Psychopath doesn't care, really, honestly doesn't care. He wants what he wants, and he's going to get it. He's going to kill people. He's going to steal it. That's it. He's a machine. He wants something. That's it. He's goal-oriented. So borderline has a very difficult life and difficult experiences, but at least she has hope. There's hope there. Narcissist all the time is trying. Narcissists always try to find love, to find relationship, to have a family, to work, to build. All the time they're trying. Psychopath doesn't try, and borderline waits. Sooner or later the problem will be solved. Narcissist keeps trying until he dies. And I think this Sisyphus, this Sisyphean picture, is sad. I think there's a lot of melancholy in narcissism. It's a melancholic condition. And it doesn't mean we should pity them, but we should not allow this pity influence our decisions. That is a mistake of many women that you mentioned. They allow pity. They pity the narcissist, and then they allow this pity to influence their decisions. And that is a mistake. You can pity someone and not sacrifice yourself, you know. And I think we need to understand that narcissists cannot help it in many ways. They choose, they make choices. I'm not saying they don't make choices. And I'm not saying some of these choices are not bad choices, even evil choices. And that's not what I'm saying. I think narcissists should be held fully accountable and responsible for what they're doing. But many of these choices and so on are driven by forces that the narcissist is not aware of and cannot control. And many of these choices have to do with the narcissist's attempt to become normal. I would say the narcissist's greatest wish is to become not average, superior, but normal. And normalcy is very important to the narcissist. That's why the narcissists get married, because they want to show the world, I'm normal. I'm like everyone. I'm normal. You know, deep inside, the narcissist knows that he's mentally ill. Deep inside, there's a lot of shame, a lot of discomfort, deep inside, buried, unconscious, a lot of. And the narcissism is compensatory. It's compensation, the false self. These grandiose claims, I'm God, I'm this, I'm that. This is compensation for a child that is inside, very frightened, very ashamed, and very. So it's a narcissism. I'm not a child. I'm not ashamed. I'm not frightened. I'm God. I know everything. I'm all powerful. He's trying to convince who? Himself. He's trying to convince not other people so much. He's trying to convince himself that he's like that. That's why we call it self-enhancement. And he uses other people, he asks other people to help him. He's saying, help me to convince myself that I'm God. You know, give me narcissistic supply. Tell me, give me attention. Tell me that I'm irresistible. Tell me that I'm a genius. Tell me that I'm brilliant. Tell me that I'm handsome. Tell me. Because I don't believe it. I need you to tell me this to convince myself. Because then I can say, other people are saying it, not me. And if other people are saying it, it must be true. I don't really believe I'm a genius. But if other people are saying I'm a genius, I can calm down, I can relax. I probably am a genius. So other people are saying it, you know. And this is the mechanism of narcissistic supply.
They must be good fathers because they are as a child and they have very big internal mind for fantasy, no?
Good fathers in this sense. Not really, because they use everyone. they cannot perceive other people as external, including their own children. With the children is even much worse, because child definitely is not external to the narcissist. So they're using people. So they would use the child to get attention, or they would use the child to get admiration, or they would create a fantasy where they're God and the child is a worshiper, or the child admires them or worships them. So always the child will have to play a role in some movie, in some theater production of the narcissist. Children would be like actors. And so, no, I wouldn't say they're good fathers. They're not. They cannot interact with other people in a way which would be good for other people. There's simply no way to accomplish this.
Even child, it's that.
Even child, even teacher, even there's no way they can interact with other people in a manner which would be beneficial to the other person. It could come accidentally, but it's never part of the plan of the structure. The narcissist takes from other people. He's a taker. He's not a giver, he's a taker. Whatever he gives, as I said, incidentally, accidentally, not intentionally he gives, but he's mainly a taker. Some narcissists pretend to be givers. They are the pro-social, communal narcissists. They pretend to be givers, but they're not really giving. They're giving in a way that would trigger narcissistic supply. So if they give a donation or charity, or they give money to the poor, they will give money to the poor in front of television camera to get supply. And then the poor feel ashamed because they're exposed to the television, the poor. So as you see, even giving money to the poor is bad for the poor people because they will be ashamed on television. So there's no way to benefit from the narcissist. And anyone who thinks, there are many people who think, many stupid people who think they can manipulate the narcissist, they can control the narcissist, they can make use of the narcissist too. These are seriously stupid people. It never ends well. There is no way to benefit from the narcissist. None. It always ends badly with destruction. So this is the picture.
Can we discuss few words about sex? Because it is very strange, this part of the life, because women say that in few months or year, it is stopped as usual. And you say about autoerotism, yeah? Андрей, помоги мне сейчас. Can we say that if autoerotism may be latentный гомосексуализм? Андрей, переведи, пожалуйста.
So Sam usually says that all interaction of narcissist is autoerotic, basically, because he interacts with his object in his mind.
But Andrei warned me not to discuss this. Didn't you,
No,
Andrei?
just not in graphic terms. You can express in academic terms, it will be fine.
Oh, academic terms are okay. Okay. All narcissists are autoerotic in the sense that they perceive their bodies as sexual objects. They are sexually aroused by their bodies. Because narcissism is fantasy-based, and because the fantasy excludes external objects, the fantasy is populated only with internal objects. The libido, if you wish to use the term libido, the sex drive, cannot be outwardly directed. If you don't have an external object, you cannot be attracted to someone outside. So there is no what we call cathexis, libidinal cathexis. There is no direction of the libido outward. But libido has to go somewhere. It's energy. So instead of going outward, the libido goes inwards. So we call it narcissistic libido. Narcissistic libido means that the libidinal cathexis, the libidinal investment, is in oneself. And this is known as autoerotism. Autoerotism has multiple impacts. First of all, the sexual partner is always internalized. In other words, even when there is a physical sexual partner in bed or wherever, that sexual partner will immediately be converted into essentially an instrument or a tool or aid. And the narcissist would make love to himself through the partner's body. He would make love to himself through the partner's gaze. So he would look, for example, he would look at the partner and he would say, wow, she is attracted to me. She is attracted to me. That proves that I'm attractive. And because I'm attractive, I can now be attracted to myself. So she confirms my attractiveness to myself. So that's one example where the narcissist uses the gaze of the other to get attracted to himself via another person's gaze, via her agency. Similarly, the narcissist would use the partner's body to masturbate with. As simple as that. So this is one reason that ultimately the sex dies out, because the sex is usually bad, very bad. It is self-centered. The partner's pleasure and the partner's wishes, the partner's preferences are not relevant at all. The partner feels objectified and dehumanized and gradually, and so on. This is one reason. Second reason, the narcissist converts the intimate partner into a maternal figure. And you should not have sex with mother. The partner becomes a mother gradually. It's a gradual process. So when the partner finally becomes a mother 100%, the sex stops because of the incest taboo, to avoid incest. The third reason is the narcissist uses sex to lure, to attract the partner. It's a bait. He uses sex to deceive the partner, if you wish, to convince her to come, to join him in the fantasy. And then when she's when she's already hooked, when she's addicted, when she's in the fantasy, when she's trapped, when she's a hostage, there's no need for sex anymore. So sex is instrumentalized. We call this process acquisition. Sex is instrumentalized to acquire the partner. Once the partner becomes captive, prisoner, hostage, or addicted, unable to walk away, for whatever reason, there's no need for sex anymore. And the sex stops. Even with cerebral narcissists, this is common. And finally, the narcissist has a betrayal fantasy. There's a narcissist original experience, for example, with a woman, was with his mother. And his mother basically betrayed him. His mother did not allow the narcissist as a child to separate and become an individual and to become. So there was a betrayal there. And it is called, by the way, betrayal trauma, betrayal trauma. So the narcissist felt betrayed. And so when he finds a new mother, the intimate partner becomes a mother, new mother, he wants to reenact what he had with his original mother. So he wants to go through all the motions, all the processes, all the dynamics he had with his original mother, including betrayal. He would push the partner away, for example, by withholding sex, by not giving her sex. He would push her to betray him. He would push her to cheat on him, for example. He would push her to become absent emotionally or otherwise. He would push her away because it's the only way he knows to interact with a feminine figure, with a woman. So not having sex creates something known as betrayal fantasy. The narcissist creates within the shared fantasy a fantasy of a mother who is betraying the only mother he knows. And the most evident sign of betrayal is sexual. So he pushes her sexually. Some narcissists would even propose openly. They would tell the partner, go and find another man and have sex with him. They would offer it to the partner, either in kinky sex, or they would push the partner. They would arrange circumstances where the partner is with another man, because they need this to happen. They need it to happen in order to confirm that she is the maternal figure. For them, if you don't betray, you're not a mother. You know, people talk about narcissistic abuse, and one misconception of narcissistic abuse: the narcissist initially abuses you because you are his mother. He is testing you. He's testing. Are you a real mother? Are you a good mother? Will you love me, never mind what I do to you? Will you love me unconditionally? Never mind how egregiously, how badly I misbehave. Never mind how much I torture you. Will you stick around? Will you stay? Because if you do, if you accept me as I am, you are my good mother. I know then that you're my mother. So narcissistic abuse, one of the major functions of narcissistic abuse, is to constantly test you for motherhood, to test how good a mother are you. How much will you tolerate? How much will you accept? How long will you stay? He's testing you all the time. Testing, testing. The betrayal fantasy is a test. He's testing you. But ironically, if you do not betray him, you fail the test. He needs you to betray him. He needs you actually to treat him badly. And that's why women keep saying, but I treated him wonderfully. Why did he abandon me? Because you treated him wonderfully. You know? So you see that there are very, very intricate dynamics here. Dynamics are not simple. They go back a long time, and they have many, many layers, some unconscious, some conscious, some behavioral, some relational. So it's a very complex disorder. It's not like what people say online, you know, this, that. So the sex stops for all these reasons combined. And then, you know, the evaluation starts and discard and so on. Now people say to me, but I've had a relationship with the narcissist for 20 years, and he did not devalue, he did not discard me. We're still together. There are many ways to discard. You can be in a relationship with the narcissist, and he has discarded you, he got rid of you 10 times. You're still together. But for example, he found another woman and cheated with her. That's a way to discard you. Or he pushed you to cheat on him. That's a way to discard you. Or he found a job in another country and he disappeared for a whole year. That's a way to discard you. Narcissists always devalue and discard, even when they're with you for 50 years. They always devalue and discard, because this is a part of the shared fantasy. The shared fantasy is inexorable, unstoppable, is stronger than the narcissist. And the shared fantasy is the only way the narcissist relates to other people, romantic or not. It's the only way.
Sam, what about that claim about latent homosexuality?
Well, there are no studies that support the claim that narcissists are more or less latent homosexuals than the general population. There are no such studies. But we do know, for example, other aspects. We know, for example, that narcissists are more likely to engage in kinky sex, which very, very often involves bisexual experiences. We know that has been established. We know that narcissists are much more likely to become bisexual than the general population. So it's reasonable to assume, but there's no proof. It's reasonable to assume that the percentage of latent homosexuals among narcissists would be higher than in the general population, although we have only indirect proof of that. It's a common mistake to believe that bisexual people are homosexual. They're not. These are two distinct phenomena. But in the case of the narcissist, I think the bisexual aspect is a bridge perhaps to homosexuality, but I'm totally speculating. There's no data.
Thank you.
Sam, are you tired now?
Yeah, I think one more question and we call it a day. It's been 3 hours.
I wanted to ask the last question. one member of our group asked us to ask you about it because nobody can't help him, and he really searched the help. The thing is that he decides that he is Andrei, скрытый психопат.
Covert psychopath.
Covert psychopath, okay.
Yes. И я по-русски скажу, и он спрашивает, может ли психопат испытывать чувство вины, Андрей?
Can covert psychopaths experience guilt?
Yeah, I understand. No need to translate, by the way. I spent 7 years in Russia. Yeah.
Yulia, and the rest of the question?
Ну, и его же вопрос, у него возникнет сложности с партнершей, которая, он считает, что она НРЛ. Возможно ли с ней построить? Может ли она быть более доминирующей для него, хотя он скрытый психопат?
So he fantasizes that her partner is narcissistic, and he tries to create some way of constructive communication between them, given that he is a covert psychopath and she is a narcissist. That's apparently a very general question with that input data.
We are beginning to change our view of psychopathy pretty fundamentally. So, for example, in the past 15 years, we realized that psychopaths are anxious, that they suffer from anxiety disorder. While prior to that, we believed that psychopaths have no anxiety, they have no fear, they're fearless, and so on. Today, we know that this is not true. The psychopaths experience anxiety, and they actually experience fear. But their bodies and their brains react to fear differently than the general population. They experience fear, but they don't realize it's fear. Not mentally and not physically. So, similarly, we definitely have a cascade of studies recently that show that psychopaths are capable of shame, they're capable of guilt, and they even can have a rudimentary form of conscience. It's very interesting because a psychopath, for example, can be very ashamed and feel very guilty about doing something, but only inside a highly specific group, the in-group. For example, a psychopath could be very ashamed for doing something bad to his family member, but he would not feel ashamed or guilty doing the same thing to someone outside the family. In other words, the affiliation, the in-group, out-group, define the parameters of what we call negative affects, shame, envy, guilt, and so on. But if you're capable of feeling guilty about your family member, then you're capable of feeling guilty, period. Then the problem is not that you're not capable of feeling guilty. The problem is social, your perception of who deserves your guilt, who deserves your shame. So that's a social problem. That's not a psychological problem. And so today, so I recommend to this guy, the questionnaire, I recommend that he watches my video titled The New Psychopath. The New Psychopath, where I explore these new studies that would answer his question about guilt. And then there is the covert psychopath as well. Now, psychopath and narcissist, generally speaking, and that includes covert psychopaths, they establish a hierarchy. Psychopaths are very hierarchical. They immediately establish, I'm on top, you're bottom. I'm dominant, you're submissive. Psychopaths never have equal relationships. Because the organizing principle of psychopathy is power, whereas narcissism, the organizing principle is attention. In borderline, the organizing principle is emotion and presence, not being abandoned. In psychopathy, the organizing principle is power, all psychopaths. So if he is with a narcissist, the first thing he would do totally instinctively, reflexively, is to establish a hierarchy with him on top and the narcissist his slave or submissive or now there are two options. She accepts the hierarchy, and then the relationship could be relatively functional and could last. Or she does not accept the hierarchy because, for example, she's grandiose. So it's very difficult to be submissive when you're grandiose. She thinks she's God, so she cannot be number two. She's always number one. And he's a psychopath. He's always number one. So if she rejects the hierarchy, the implicit hierarchy, then this would render the relationship power play, highly unstable and dangerous, risky. They will both end up externalizing aggression. I'll go a bit further, a bit deeper. The narcissist has a discrepancy, a gap between what we call implicit self-esteem and explicit self-esteem. There's a gap, an abyss between how the narcissist feels about herself, really, truly, when she's all alone in the toilet, and how the narcissist presents herself to the world. Like, you know, I'm gorgeous, I'm amazing, I'm genius, I'm godlike, I'm this and that. So there's a gap between implicit and explicit self-esteem. To compensate for this gap, the narcissist projects an image called the false self and expects other people to confirm that the image is real, that her claims are correct. Her claims about herself, her self-concept is correct. The psychopath is unable to do this because one of the main claims in narcissism is I'm superior. It's a main message, main signal of the narcissist. When the psychopath says, no, you're not superior, I'm superior, you're not number one, I'm number one, this would lead to externalized aggression. Ironically, clinically what happens, when the narcissist is challenged this way, the narcissist initially becomes a borderline and then becomes a secondary psychopath. She becomes a bit psychopathic. So there's a power play. At that point, the narcissist will become highly emotionally dysregulated. She will become very crazy, very chaotic, very all over the place and so on. And then she will become very aggressive, very violent. At the same time, the psychopath would need to reassert his superiority, so he would try to suppress the narcissist. He would become also aggressive and violent in trying to establish hierarchy. To cut a long story short, in a relationship where the narcissist is grandiose and the psychopath is any psychopath, this ends either in the establishment of a hierarchy and total submission, slavery in effect, or in externalized aggression and violence between the two. I don't know the particulars of the situation. If he sees any signs of aggression, verbal aggression, verbal abuse, he should walk away because this aggression escalates and ends in violence, including deadly violence. This is extremely combustible, explosive, dangerous situation. If, on the other hand, she's submissive, she says, okay, you're the boss, you're the alpha male, you're superior, I obey you, I listen to you, you're my reality, you're my life, and so on and so forth, then this is sustainable for the long term. If she becomes essentially inverted, she becomes inverted, covert. She lives through him. She enjoys his supply. So I don't know enough about this particular situation, but I gave him the indications. If he sees any sign of aggression and so on, he should walk away. If he sees submission, then it's sustainable in the long term.
He asked in particular about specifics of mortification in covert psychopaths, how it goes, because he suspects something like that in his case. How is it different from mortification in narcissist?
No, it's very different. In narcissism, in pathological narcissism, narcissistic mortification leads to a borderline state, a borderline personality organization.
Mm-hmm.
Otto Kernberg said that pathological narcissism is a defense developed in early childhood against a borderline personality organization. The child experiences trauma and abuse. The child reacts with extreme, intense, overwhelming emotions. These emotions terrify the child, and the child develops narcissism to keep these emotions down, to bury them somehow. This is the view of Kernberg to which I subscribe. I agree with. When you remove the narcissism, what is left is a borderline. So narcissistic mortification disables, deactivates all the defenses of the narcissist. It creates decompensation. Decompensate. So all the defenses of the narcissist shut down. You can hear it. Clack, 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 clack. The defenses are down. And what is left behind is a borderline. So the narcissist becomes emotionally dysregulated, overwhelmed by emotions, especially negative emotions, negative affectivity. The narcissist becomes suicidal. He develops suicidal ideation. He has depressive illness. So this is in narcissistic mortification. To remind you, narcissistic mortification is when there is an abrupt, sudden, unexpected, public, usually, instance of humiliation and shame. This causes narcissistic mortification. In psychopathy, the mortification has to do with a failure to accomplish goals. When the psychopath fails to accomplish goals, and this leads essentially to a state of collapse. When the psychopathic defenses are decompensated, what is left behind is a narcissist. So when you disable narcissism, you get a borderline. When you disable psychopathy, you get a narcissist. When the psychopath fails to obtain goals in reality, he obtains these goals in fantasy, and he becomes a narcissist. So while narcissistic mortification in a narcissist is life-threatening, mortification in psychopathy, including covert psychopathy, is not life-threatening. It simply creates an interim phase, usually limited in time, of retreat, withdrawal to narcissistic fantasy, which is compensatory and allows the psychopath to recover, regroup, and try to tackle the same goal, very often from a different angle or in a different way. So mortification feels very different. In the case of the narcissist, it feels like dying, like he's dead. In the case of a psychopath, mortification resembles extreme, overpowering, overwhelming frustration, like a child who's temper tantrum, spoiled brat. And then the psychopath can become aggressive and even violent, and so on and so forth. And ultimately, he settles down to a phase which resembles very much overt narcissism.
And this applies to factor 1 psychopaths or to both?
Yes, it applies to factor 1 and factor 2, actually. Although in factor 2, the narcissistic phase following mortification, if the narcissistic phase doesn't hold, there will be a third phase of borderline. But in majority of cases, it holds.
So it's another round of mortification.
Yeah, mortification.
Narcissistic defenses also don't hold up, and then it mortifies to the next stage.
Yes. That's why borderlines, when they experience collapse, borderlines become secondary narcissists. They go through all these phases. They become narcissistic, and then they become secondary psychopath. So
from borderline to narcissist and then to secondary psychopath.
Yes. So if you frustrate a borderline, for example, if you abandon her or reject her, humiliate a borderline, initially she would react the way a narcissist does. She would become grandiose. She would humiliate you. She would declare herself superior. She would become very narcissistic. And then she would transition from narcissism to secondary psychopathy. She would become defiant and reckless, and she would act out. She would do crazy things.
So that second stage happens if your first transition doesn't lead to any positive outcome. Then she goes into that second stage of mortification.
Yeah. If the narcissism doesn't, for example, when she becomes a narcissist, you challenge her with abandonment, rejection, humiliation, and she becomes a narcissist. She tells you, you don't know what you're missing. I'm the greatest. I'm amazing. I'm the most beautiful girl you ever had. And you're stupid, and you don't know what you're doing. And so if this gets the work done, if then you say, you know what? I'm really stupid. I should never abandon you. You're amazing. You are the best thing that happened to me in my life. And so on. That's where it stops.
And she returns back to borderline stage.
Sorry?
And she returns back to her borderline state after all.
She reverts to borderline. If, however, you tell her you're not as beautiful as you think, and if anyone is stupid, it's you. and so on, then she would transition to secondary psychopathy. And she is very likely to act out, including become violent, reckless, and also violent. She's likely to break things or even attack you physically. And this in reverse process with covert psychopath. So simply reverse. But there is something I want to say to this guy in particular. If he's experiencing mortification, possibly he's experiencing it unbeknownst to him, maybe, because of the narcissist in his life. One of the main triggers of mortification in psychopathy is narcissism, the narcissist, having someone who is a narcissist with you, because the narcissist frustrates the psychopath. The narcissist does not allow the psychopath to obtain goals. And we know from Dollard in 1939, frustration leads to aggression. So if you as a psychopath, covert, not covert, secondary, primary, doesn't matter. If you're a psychopath, they're all goal-oriented. If you're a psychopath, you have someone with you who constantly competes with you, doesn't allow you to realize your goals, and so on. So you are likely to experience mortification, much more likely, let's say, than if you don't have someone like that. In short, I think this is a seriously bad idea for a combination. I would reconsider the whole thing. They will trigger each other all the time. He will trigger her grandiosity by claiming superiority. She will trigger his mortification by frustrating him. It's going to devolve into essentially a borderline landscape, where both of them go bananas and they become dysregulated and fight all the time, and it's a bloody mess. So I don't know why they need this, but it's up to them. Love is blind. Yeah.
As I remember, he explained that as some isolated event, they were kind of agreeing with each other for quite some time, and now something happened, and he kind of tried to find some optimal solution for his situation, what to do in this.
I don't know enough. This, I don't know enough. But again, if this isolated event included aggression, I advise him to walk away, because the minute it starts, it escalates. And there's no end to the escalation. It could definitely end seriously badly. So she played the game. She was submissive and so on. And then at some point, it was too much, maybe. And there was an incident. Now, if the incident was innocent, maybe verbal exchange, but if it was aggressive in any way, shape, or form, including verbal abuse, then this is a sign that she can't do it anymore. She can't act anymore. And that's bad. Then he must definitely walk away, because it's absolutely dangerous. I don't know how much I can emphasize.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think before all of us collapse and need a hospital urgently.
We must have the time to think about it.
Yes, it was a great pleasure to see you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. And apologies for the misunderstanding at the beginning. But I never give interviews to groups. Groups, I have seminars. Groups, I have lectures. I never do it online. Because I absolutely hate this type of interaction with groups online. I really hate it. When you're with a group face to face in a space, the dynamics are so much more better, than I don't know. So
they were planned just observers. They wouldn't interact without our.
Yeah, I understood. But still, you see the faces and you see it's not a good dynamic for me, at least. Anyhow, for you to know, Andrei, for you to know, I don't know if Yulia is capable of traveling, but for you to know, there would be seminar in University of Salzburg in September, in mid-September. So if you want to attend and so on. By the way, the topic of the seminar is different. It's the emergence or the evolution of cluster B personality disorders in childhood and adolescence, which I think would be very interesting for Yulia, but I don't know if she's capable of travel.
It is somewhere on your website, or will you send the link?
No. It's a seminar, physical seminar in the University of Salzburg.
Yes, but announcement is available somewhere.
Oh, announcement will be in due time on Instagram, YouTube, everywhere. Yeah.
Okay, if you send the link, I will be most happy, apparently, to attend.
Yeah. Make a note to yourself. It's in mid of September. If for some reason you haven't seen any announcement or something, contact me. It's the 15th of September, so contact me, let's say, middle of August or something, and I will give you the details.
Thank you very much.
Okay? And of course, everyone is invited. Yulia is invited, and all the members of your group, you're all invited to the seminar. If you're able to travel and so on. The seminar is 5 days, so it opens with a lecture, the use of philosophy in the treatment of mental illness, and then 4 days of seminar on the etiology in childhood and adolescence. So it's emphasis on how cluster B personality disorder emerge in these ages, critical ages. I think this topic interests me a lot, so I find it interesting.
Okay, thank you. We will have our eyes open.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Maybe we will have another
Thank you
opportunity,
very
but for now we are
Yes, with pleasure.
pretty much full of
I'm
emotions.
available again, by the way, not immediately, but like in 1 month or 2 months if you want another round.
Yeah.
Same arrangement, you, me, and Andre.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, take care.
Thank you much, Sam.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.